Last week, I ran the Chicago Marathon in 2 hours and 55 minutes. After having all of my runs scheduled out for days, weeks, and months on end, it feels a little bit weird to go from running this race where I'm all pumped up to doing absolutely nothing with no plan. So if you are in the same boat as I am and you're trying to figure out what you're supposed to do right after your marathon, don't worry, this video is for you. I am going to walk through what my protocol is for what I do right after a goal race and how to get back into running after that. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Juliana, and this channel is dedicated to sharing my journey of how I marathon train while trying to grow my startup and working a full-time 9-to-5 corporate job. So if you're interested in following along, please make sure to hit that bell button down below and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out to keep me motivated so I can keep making awesome content for you guys. So without further ado, let's dive into exactly how I physically and mentally recover from a marathon so that you can take some of my best practices and apply it towards your running. Okay, so this first part of the video is dedicated to what I like to do in the days immediately following the race, and this is kind of more on an emotional level. If you've been subscribed to the channel and have watched some of my other videos, you might note that I really love journaling, and especially for running, tapping into this more emotional and mental side of things can be really helpful to identify some patterns in training and running in general. So what I love to do immediately in the few days following the race is to really just reflect on my performance on several different levels in journal form. So I actually am going to have a link in the description down below where you can access what this whole journaling prompt looks like if you want to have a full set of questions that kind of dive deeper for what I'm about to discuss with you guys here. But basically, I split it into 3 different categories. So the first piece is reflecting on what my emotions were immediately following the race. There are a lot of emotions that we can feel when we walk off the finish line. We can be extremely proud of ourselves. We can be extremely upset. We can be sometimes indifferent and just like, okay, on to the next one. But taking stock of those emotions and writing them down in the day or so following your race can be really helpful to get out all of that anger, happiness, positivity, negativity, indifference, whatever it is. Just get it all down so you can bottle that up so it's not just living in your head for weeks and weeks on end. So that's the first piece. And then the second piece is to reflect on the actual race itself and how it went. So there's a few components to this. And again, if you check that digital download in the link in the description, I'll have a full list of what all of these things are and some additional questions for you to think about too. So in terms of reflecting on the actual race, think about how you felt during the race. Did you feel good? Did you feel bad? If you felt amazing, what were some of those factors that helped you really feel amazing? In the few days following your race is when your memory is going to be the most fresh. So this is the time where I really like to think about, especially if my race went really, really well, what did I do? What did I eat the night before? What did I eat in the days before? Did I have a couple of hydration packets the morning of the race, the night before the race? Did I foam roll? Did I ice bathe? Did I do the sauna? All of these details you are going to want to jot down when your memory is the freshest so that you can create this little race checklist for yourself so that next time you can do the exact protocol that you did when you felt amazing for your race. And obviously it's not guaranteed that you go through this whole checklist and then you'll feel amazing on race day, but if you do all of these things, it's much more likely to happen. So that's the first thing. But if the race did not go well, having fresh in your mind, okay, what were some of the factors that might have contributed to me not feeling so great? Did I walk around a lot and explore the city when I should have saved that for after the race? Did I have a lot of stress at work? Listing out all of these factors and then maybe coming up with some sort of solution for how you can prevent this type of thing from happening in the future if you feel like it did not contribute to your optimal race performance can be really helpful. So the third piece in reflecting on the actual race is I like to do a race recap. So for this, I really go mile by mile. How did I feel during the race? What were some of the toughest points? And I think just doing this is kind of cool to relive the race a little bit. And then also just for the future, know like, okay, if I had a really tough time getting going in the beginning, but I was able to eventually find my stride by mile 10 and really lock into my goal pace, I know that if I journal this in the few days where it's fresh in my mind after the race, I know that for the future, I can look back on what my race experience was and see patterns over time as I start to rack up multiple marathons and see, okay, yeah, normally it does take me a few miles to find my stride, and I start off not feeling too great, but eventually by mile 10, I'm locked into my goal pace. Or if you're the kind of person that struggles around mile 20 and you had an amazing race, what did you tell yourself so that you could keep going through those final 6.2 miles? And I'll have, again, in that digital download, I'll have more questions that you can kind of think about to dive into your specific race reflection. And the third piece of the journal reflection that I like to do is to reflect on the actual training. So if you work with a coach, this could even be you journaling and then sharing this with your coach, or talking through with your coach some of the things that I'm about to dive into now. But basically, you want to reflect on what went well for you in training and what didn't go so well for you. And I do have a list of a bunch of different questions that you can think about in that digital download below, so make sure to grab the link. But some of the things that I like to think about, for example, are what did you like or not like about your training for the marathon? What workouts were the hardest for you? And which were the easiest? And why do you think that is? Do you think that the amount of mileage that you were doing was just right? Was it too much? I think a lot of runners in general always try to push towards more mileage when sometimes we need to pull back. So think about your training long and hard and think about, do you actually need to add more, or do you need to maybe do less? If you are tired all the time, do you need to add in another rest day? Thinking about all of that and reflecting on it can be really helpful now before you dive into a whole other training cycle. Okay, so this second part of the video is really dedicated to how I recover physically from the marathon. I also just did want to mention that I don't necessarily recommend what I do for everyone. I have been running for about 17 years now, so I have a ton of experience. I've never had an injury, and my body tends to recover very, very quickly. So for most people, I really do recommend taking a full week or more off of running and building back up very, very slowly. And what you want to be doing after the marathon is recovering physically as much as possible. This is the time when you need to soak in all of your training. You just went through an extremely hard effort, so don't feel pressured to run at all if you don't feel like it, you don't want to, or your body is just really, really hurting still, even after that 1 or 2 week period. All of that is completely normal and totally depends on your experience and how hard you went in the actual race. But in case anyone is interested in exactly what I do and how I approach the physical recovery period, that's what I'm going to talk about in this next part of the video. So again, always make sure to check with your doctor or physical therapist or anyone that can really advise you based on your specific training. But effectively, I will take the first week after I finish the race, and I will not put any pressure on myself to run really at all, but I just love running, so I try to do what I can. But in this first week, I usually take about 3 or 4 days completely off from running. And maybe that 4th or 5th day, when I do start to run again, I will check for any signs of glaring pain. There might be some soreness still from the race. That's expected and normal after running a marathon. But if there's any pain, I stop. And that first run that I do when I run back is just a test 4-mile run to kind of check my body, see how it's feeling. And if all is well, the next day I'll do maybe another 5 or 6 miler. And then that 3rd or 4th day, I'll cross train or maybe do another 4-miler. And then the 5th day, maybe like an 8-miler or something like that. But I'm coming off of running 85-mile weeks, so this first week of mileage is maybe 20 miles max, and I'm taking everything super, super easy. And the next week, I am also taking things super easy, and I will maybe do anywhere from 45 to 55 miles, depending on how I'm feeling. And if at any point there's any glaring pain, I will cross train or not do any exercise, but I've never really had an injury ever. I've had a couple things pop up here and there, some niggles, like I had a hamstring thing that kind of came up about 1.5 years ago. That was actually bothering me during Chicago, but that will come in the race recap. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss the hamstring story. But anyway, I just really take it day by day, and I don't put too much pressure on myself. And the whole month really after the marathon, I am going easy. So there's really no pressure on doing any sort of strides or anything like that. It is truly easy running. And for me, since I run about 2 marathons a year, I am doing a period of very heavy training for one 18-week cycle and then another 18-week cycle. So the breaks that I have in between those training cycles, I want to take it easy and just enjoy running because I know I'm going to be hitting it soon with the speed and the mileage. That being said, I like to slowly build up my mileage again from where it was before the race. So it's not going to be my peak marathon mileage, obviously, but I want to get myself to a place where I actually feel pretty comfortable running a solid amount of mileage that will put me in a good place to be able to increase my miles even more when I'm in my next training cycle. So I'm not doing anything too crazy. I really do follow the 10% rule. The 10% rule is basically you don't want to add more than 10% of your miles for the previous week to the next week. So if you're running 70 miles a week, you don't want to all of a sudden the next week run 85 miles. So I think the 10% rule also can kind of like vary depending on who you are and what your training history is, etc. But as a general rule of thumb, I personally like to follow the 10% rule, and I will even take it so much as I will do maybe a 10% increase and then I'll hold for a few weeks, or I'll do 10% for 1 week, 10% for the next week, 10% for that third week, and then the fourth week I'll cut back down by 15%. So that's typically how I like to roll. And in this period of when I finished one marathon and I'm waiting for the next marathon training cycle to start, I really just like to keep it mostly easy, especially in that first month following the race. If in the second month after the race, I'm starting to feel a little itch towards speed, I'll maybe throw in some more VO2 max type work, especially since we don't get to do a ton of that in marathon training. So I'll throw in maybe a couple days of speed work. But again, I'm slowly building that up. I'm not just randomly going out one day and deciding to run 16 400s. I will have a structured approach about this. I'll start out with strides maybe a couple times a week, and if all goes well and my body is responding and I'm not getting injured, I will then start to add in more structure. But the goal is to really recover your body during this period so you can get to your next training cycle being healthy. And that's really just the main goal. So I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below what you do to recover from your marathon and what your favorite tricks and tips are so that you can get to your training cycle as healthy as possible. So if you enjoyed this video, again, please make sure to hit that bell button down below and subscribe to the channel. And for now, check out this video for some more tips. So I'll see you guys in the next one.